Welcome in to Picks and Parlays. It is a great day here to talk some sports betting. We're diving into college basketball, NBA. It's all coming up on Picks and Parlays. But first, I'm your host, Chelsa Messinger. You can find me every day on Twitter. My handle is just my name, at Chelsa Messinger. If you want to drop me a comment, a meme, or some of your plays, if you've got a good pick or parlay for me, I'd love to hear it. You can find us on social media if you search Picks and Parlays. We're really easy to find on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Diving into some NCAA basketball future today in the first segment. As we've mentioned on the show before, college basketball seems to be wide open this year. There's not really a team that's far and away the clear-cut number one. Baylor is the number one team, but they're not a team that's been super dominant. They're not a team that's the hands-down favorite to win it all. So you can really get some good value on some of these futures. And it should be a really fun March Madness that's coming up pretty soon, Selection Sunday, March 15th. So not that far from now. So if you want to do some research on some of these college teams and make sure your bracket is looking good, and also, if you want to win some money day to day, we're also diving in to those day-to-day games with NCAA basketball. Florida State, Duke, Baylor, Texas, and TCU, Texas Tech. A great game that we just saw was Duke, UNC. Duke was favored in that one, 7.5, I believe. The line moved a lot. Duke opened as big favorites in that one. Because, of course, North Carolina is not the team that they normally are talent-wise. I think it's there, but a tough season for the Tar Heels. But they gave Duke all they could handle, but somehow they fumbled away the game in overtime. It was a fun one to watch, but just to show that some of these rankings don't necessarily matter when it comes to college basketball. And, of course, we've got NBA. It's all coming up on Picks and Parlays. Packed show. Lots of games, hopefully lots of winners. When we come back from the break, we're talking NCAA basketball futures on Picks and Parlays. On the Sports Byline Broadcast Network and also streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you search Picks and Parlays, we're really easy to find. If you want to drop us a line or a comment on any of those social media platforms, we'd love to hear from you. I'm your host, Chelsa Messinger. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is just my name, at Chelsa Messinger. We've got a lot of basketball to get into today, and we're starting with some NCAA basketball futures. As I mentioned in the first segment, it seems like college basketball is wide open when it comes to the men's side this year. There's not a clear-cut favorite like there is some of the years past. We've got Craig Trapp joining us to talk some of these futures and March Madness. Craig, can you hear me? Are you there? How you doing?
Yeah, exciting time of year, And when you talk about the NCAA this year, like you said, more wide open than maybe we've ever seen. I think the odds definitely say that at this point of the season. We're about a month before madness begins. But as of right now, Duke and Kansas at 7-1. Usually this time of year, you have one team in that 5-1 range. But Duke and Kansas share the top at 7-1, and then Gonzaga at 10-1. Number one right now, Baylor, all the way down at 12-1 with, number 5th, Dayton Flyers 12-1. I mean, that tells you how open it is when the Dayton Flyers were unranked beginning of the season and are now the 5th favorite at 12-1.
Right. And I don't even like that value on Duke. As we saw in the UNC game, they're very beatable. And the fact that they're only shooting 69% from the free throw line, that scares me. And just in general, not the best shooting team we've seen from Duke, as opposed to some of the years past where Duke has had these shooters from the outside, and they've really tailored their game to that. They look more like Kentucky this year. They have a lot of the one-and-dones. But what are some of the plays you like when it comes to these futures?
Well, I would bet against any team single digits odds or even those 12-1. I just think you have to stay away. I think proving this year, we've seen more number ones beat to this point of the season than ever before. We see team that is number one right now in Baylor that is, third, fourth favorite. I mean, to me, that just screams take a price this year, which anytime I'm betting futures, I want 15-1 or better in most cases this year. One of these bets is going to be a little lower than that, but I think my team to bet, and the team I've already actually placed some money on them. We're going to play some more. Seton Hall at 18-1, and we've seen this Seton Hall team. They're the class of a pretty good Big East right now. They won at Villanova for the first time in 2 decades, and Coach Kevin Willard's really turned that program around. Miles Powell, Player of the Year candidate, one of the few players. Usually these Player of the Year candidates lately have been the one and dones, but I like them at 18-1. I think they have some quality wins on the season. And when Miles Powell was out early this year, they still had some big wins. They won at Maryland without Miles Powell. So I think Seton Hall has developed some nice depth, and they have some upperclassmen leadership, which is always nice to see come tournament time. So I'm going to take Seton Hall at 18-1 as my top favorite. And I think the Big East is way underrated there. I think the Big Ten's overrated, and I think the ACC is actually, I think, underrated. I like Louisville as my second choice at 14-1. Coach Chris Mack, what a job he's done since, of course, kind of picking up the pieces from Coach Rick Pitino and all the controversy when he left there. I like Louisville at 14-1. I think they're a very dangerous team, and we know when you come out of the ACC, you'll be ready to go because you face a gauntlet of a schedule. So I think Louisville is the clear-cut second favorite as far as I'm concerned, as far as my bets are concerned. I think Chris Mack and Louisville have something. But this team also, they lost to Kentucky early in the year, and it wasn't close. So as I said, this year anybody can beat anybody. Make sure you're kind of swinging for the fences a little bit this year.
Right. Did you say a long shot play?
I didn't throw my super, super long shot. My super long shot would be the Creighton Blue Jays.
Throw it out there.
I mean, like
Creighton.
Creighton at 80-1. We've seen this Creighton team. Now, obviously, when you're getting 80-1, you're going to have some bad losses along the way. But this team beat Marquette by 17 early in the year when Marquette was actually playing pretty well at that point. They beat Xavier, which has been playing well. They won at Villanova. They beat a good St. John's team last time out. But then, of course, to keep those odds up there, you have to have these losses along the way. They had a loss at Providence, 73-56. So not the greatest loss. But the one thing Creighton does is they really spread the floor out. They really enjoy the drive and kick offense. And I think that's a dangerous team come tournament time, a team that can really shoot it well. I like the guards and the depth that they have from the three-point shooting line. I think the Creighton Blue Jays at 80-1. I don't think you'll get 81 come tournament time. I think they'll probably be closer to 40-50-1. But I like what Coach McDermott has continued to do with this Creighton team.
That would be my other issue is when you should place these bets, if you should place them before or after their conference tournaments. And also with your long shot bets, make sure that they're going to make the tournament.
Well, when you're
right?
getting those 50-1 plus, those are the guys that are going. I mean, this team is not. All three of these teams are going to get in. They're all solidly, in that 3 to 8 spot as far as right now in projected seeding. So all these probably, unless they just injuries or something falls off, that is the worry right now. Of course, one bad injury, and you go from being one of a good team to a bad team now. And I think with the one and done rule that is, basically destroyed college basketball as we know it, over my generation at least. I think you see this now. These one and done teams very seldom, and now that means Duke, and that means Kentucky. Those are even North Carolina with Cole Anthony this year.
Kansas.
These are the type teams that they struggle come tournament time. You remember last year, Oregon kind of barely got into the tournament and then ran a deep run in the tournament. Why? They actually had some depth and some experience at the guard play. So I think that's something you need to look at. I wouldn't be going crazy putting a future bet out at this point of the season, but when you're getting this kind of value, you throw a couple $100. If you're a $500 player and you throw a couple $100 on any of these, all three of these, if one of them hit, you're going to have a big profit. And that's what I do. Now, if you're really wanting to make a big future bet, I would wait to around conference tournament, right before or right after that, because then you guarantee pretty much that you're going to have what you expect as far as injuries and that kind of stuff is concerned.
Right. It's really an interesting dynamic, like you kind of alluded to. the teams that have the one and dones as opposed to the teams that don't. As we saw in the Duke game against Stephen F. Austin. That's right, Stephen F. Austin, who came to Duke and beat Duke on their home court. They have some seniors. They have some guys that have been there. They've been playing together longer. And sometimes with these one and done teams, the chemistry is not there. They have a lot of turnovers, especially earlier in the season. We really saw it with some of these big name teams. They look bad to start the season. So if you're going for a long shot bet, maybe pick one of those teams that has some good seniors, some good juniors, some teams that have some chemistry already there.
Well, guard play is number one in NCAA tournament. That you have to have great guard play to win. We saw it last year with Virginia. You have to own the other team's guards. Usually the better guard wins most matchups in NCAA tournament, and experience does matter. Since Duke has gone to this one and done, we haven't seen them do nearly as well in the tournament. That's been a problem. As Brian Bittler says, he likes Duke. They are good. It's not that they're not good. The problem is that where's their experience? Remember last year they had Zion, obviously number one pick overall. Guess what? They could not shoot the 3-point line. From the 3-point line, people sagged off.
Which is crazy for Duke.
Yeah.
That used to be Duke's bread and butter.
Right, because they had guys that stayed 3 or 4 years and developed unbelievable shooters like J.J. Redick. Guys that come out of high school now aren't necessarily great, it's consistent. I should say they're good shooters. They're not great shooters. And I think that's going to be the problem again. Duke, that was their bugaboo last year, barely beat Central Florida, let's remember. And with the Taco Fall Zion matchup, what a matchup that was. Very good game. And then they lost next round. So to me, that's going to be their problem again. You got to make 3-point shots. Maybe this year with the line extended, it's not such a big deal for teams that don't shoot it as well. But I still have a feeling the teams that win are going to be hot from the 3-point line, are going to have the better guard play. And to me, that's why I love Seton Hall. Miles Powell, legitimate player of the year candidate. If he doesn't win, he probably should win. And I love Coach Kevin Willard. Remember, he comes from that Louisville Cardinals, Rick Pitino's school of thinking, and we know how good Rick Pitino was in NCAA tournament.
All right, that is our NCAA basketball futures segment. Thanks, Craig Trapp, for joining us. When we get back from the break, more college basketball. What more can you ask for? We're back in a minute on Picks and Parlays. Stick with us. Welcome back to Picks and Parlays on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network, and also streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to find us on any of those social media platforms, all you got to do is search Picks and Parlays, and we're usually the first thing that pops up. Really easy to find. I'm your host, Chelsa Messinger. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is just my name, @Chelsa Messinger, if you want to drop me a line, a play or a parlay, whatever you want to do. Right now, we are going back to more college basketball because it's that time of year. We've got Sean Higgs joining us to talk a little college basketball. Hello, Sean. Got all the picks and parlays gear on.
Yeah, I always wear my picks and parlays gear. I enjoy it. It's nice to show it off.
All right, they still haven't sent me any.
Hey, nice hat. I want a hat.
I know they haven't sent me any gear. I guess because before I was pregnant, so nothing would fit me. But now they don't have an excuse.
Yeah, we'll send you some mediums, nice little smalls, little lady stuff.
Mediums. All right. Well, let's talk a little college basketball as promised. Let's start with Florida State and Duke. The number 8 Seminoles are dogs in this one. 8.5 is the number I have. Total looking at 148.5. Number 7, Duke, of course, coming off that thrilling overtime win over Carolina, which UNC was not ranked. Yes, it was a rivalry game, but it's not a game that Duke was supposed to even be close in. So initial thoughts on this Florida State-Duke matchup. That's a big matchup in the ACC.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, you talked about the NC game, and, you lose a big-time player, and your season falls apart. But listen, he's back. They're playing better. And then you see a big battle. And now you got Duke. Not only do they battle back in that game to force overtime, I mean, on a crazy shot and win it the way they win it, and now you're going to come here and lay 8.5 to a pretty good Florida side. I mean, it could be a square play, but I just have to take the dog here just based on the way Duke's come out of the Saturday game. I mean, that's how – what do you got in the tank after that? I mean, maybe if you just play a first half money line play on Florida State, you have to think they're, Duke's going to be gassed a little bit. I mean, I look, college basketball, you got to look kind of like the emotional roller coaster part of things. And you're coming off a rivalry game, shot at the buzzer to force overtime, then to win it. I mean, come on. Now you got to come battle another top 10 team, a team that you've beaten 4 straight, a team that's out to get you because they're angry that you've been smacking them around. And like I said, it's probably a cheesy play because part of me is like, man, this is a big number, 8.5. Because both of these teams they're pretty equal. They're pretty equal. And I see this number and I'm like, man, they're just begging to take Florida State. But I just have to, on principle, coming off a game like that and the way they've handled Florida State's, we just got to hang close here. We're getting a big number. I think they could probably pick them off. That's what I'm hoping for. But worst case, we get a backdoor when we get 8.5 points. That's for sure.
Right. That's a lot of points to a team that's 20-3. Florida State is one of those teams contending in the ACC, and they're one of those teams that want a good seeding come tournament time. They're definitely not a team that's just middle of the pack ACC. They're contenders.
Yeah, but listen, you filter in that they've lost 4 straight to Duke, and that adds a lot to it because again, you face these guys too, and with tournaments sometimes 3 times a year. Sometimes teams kind of own a team. And just because you think they're going to come out and they're due for a win and revenge and all that kind of stuff doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's, again, why we're looking at a big 8.5 number here. Sometimes a team just got your number. They know how you play, and that's that. But, again, 8.5, this isn't 3 where you're like, we're talking 8 points. Again, you're off a crazy overtime game like that. It's like a college football. Alabama's playing LSU, and the next week they have Arkansas. It's going to be a drop down because they're still laying 35 points, but where's the motivation? A lot of motivation for Florida State. Duke's got to be a little winded to get back up. I mean, that's just a big number. That's plain and simple. Big number. Again, and off that overtime game, I just got to play it on, just the way the ebbs and flows of basketball go.
Right. Coach K, every time they showed him on the screen, it looked like he was having a silent heart attack. Bless his heart. I think he's 117 years old, and he's still winning these games. But, yeah, it's a big number to lay. And I think this Florida State team's really good. They're not a team that has been great at rebounding and down low in the past, but they are getting better. We saw that with Duke. If Vernon Carey Jr. can be contained or if they can get him in foul trouble, teams definitely have a chance. So, I like Florida State getting quite a few points. Let's move on to the number 1 team in the country. Baylor is -6 at Texas. The total is 127.5. Another, it's not a big number, but it's a considerable number. Who do we like in this one?
You got to go back to November 8th for the Baylor Bears' lone loss, 67-64 on the neutral court to Washington. 20 straight wins for these guys. Man, how do you not take Baylor? I mean, I know they're number 1, and Craig had some great points just where he's doing his future bet where the number is, but these guys are as good as anybody right now. I mean, I'm going back looking at some of these lines like 6.5. It's tough. You're laying on the road to Texas. You've already beat them by 15. Shut them down. They gave up 44 points in that game, but I just can't. Again, they've just been. You got your San Diego States. Gonzaga's been rolling. Baylor, maybe they get the nod because they're with Kansas, so they get a little bit over Gonzaga and the San Diego States, but I just have to take them right now. I mean, they're just 20 straight wins. They're on a different level, and they're doing it with defense. So, again, we're looking at a 6.5 Texas, a young team. Where they're going, I don't think they're bubble material here. I know it's a wide open college basketball league, but Baylor's got something special going on. No look ahead. It's not like they got a revenge game on deck or anything like that. How do you not? They play good defense, and they're just methodical. I mean, it's 6.5. The last couple games, they would have covered all this number. So I'm going to lay it. Could be a square play because they are the number 1 team. And, usually coming out, we've had some hiccups this year with the number 1 teams. We've seen a number of them go down, but 20 straight. I just like the way these guys are playing. I mean, I like the day in future for what Craig was saying on them, but I don't know. Baylor's been tough all year, and I just like the defense.
Right.
Sometimes, we saw with Texas Tech's team last year. Defense gets you out of nowhere, and here you go on a run. And these guys are definitely on a run for sure. I mean, actually, I'd like to see them lose a game or two before the tournament starts, because all of a sudden you're winning they got 7-8 games left in regular season, and what are you going to go in there on a 30-game win streak? That's where the pressure.
Yeah,
that's where you start fading them. That's where you fade them in the second round when they're laying 8 points and they're 230 on the money line. Take the dog there, because that's you start getting big numbers like that. That's when you tighten up a little bit, especially on a program that's not known for big deep runs like this.
Being there, yeah. For a number one team, they actually don't have that great of stats. They're shooting 69% from the free throw line and 43% from the field. So you're right. I think the defense is the calling card for them, because they're only averaging 72 points per game. But we're looking at this game in particular, and Texas is averaging just 65 points per game, which is not
young.
great.
They're a young team too.
And they're 4-9 against the spread at home. Texas is. Meanwhile, Baylor 5-1 against the number away. So just based off that alone, yeah, I know.
I don't care. I'll take ugly. The numbers aren't there, but with the numbers, they get it done. That's what all matters. I'll take the ugly numbers. It's not sexy, but it's a winner. Puts money in our pockets.
Right, and that's all that matters. Let's move on to TCU, Texas Tech. This one opened at -9 for Texas Tech, I believe, and it's now at 11. I have it. I'm not sure the number you have. Texas Tech 15-8, 11-12 against the spread. TCU is 13-10 and 7-15 against the number. So who do you like?
Well, I'm seeing a 10.5 right now with Texas Tech here at home, 127.5. I'm gonna go home chalk again here. It's a little chalk show here with Texas Tech, but a couple weeks ago they were needing a big win and they got it over West Virginia. 2 straight wins for them. They had the loss to Kansas 78-75. They lost a close one 76-74 to Kentucky. So 3 of the last 5, but they seem to be getting in groove, playing a lot better. Close loss. I know there's no moral victories when it comes to college basketball wins, stuff like that, but again, you get in the national championship game last year. Teams are gunning for you a little bit. You get a little changeover, slow out of the gates. But 15-8, you got 5 straight losses for TCU here. Where are they going? They're mailing it in. They won't. They're lucky to be NIT bound. I got them, pretty far down. You see those net rankings. I think they're 80 or 90th. They're pretty deep. So Texas Tech, again, another defensive team. What's this game going to be 70-56 or something like that? I see, 10-15 point win here. Texas Tech, I think, again, they've been a lot better. Close losses, yes, but a lot better competition than what you're going to see here in TCU. So 10.5's big, but they got stuff to prove. They got to get it done. They want to go dance in decent seed, get back to that national championship game, which long shot, but they're still a good team. So we'll lay the 10.5.
And speaking of bad free throw shooters, TCU is shooting 61% from the free throw line, which is almost Dwight Howard-like.
It's, again, I'll go back to what Craig was saying about the people coming out and shooting threes and developing shooters. These kids today, they just want to chuck up threes. I see it in my son's basketball, 13 years old. Everybody wants to shoot threes. No one could hit a free throw. It's terrible. And it's the same in college basketball. I mean, you're in the free throw line. Nobody's guarded you. How hard is it to hit open shot? You can't hit open shots.
That's just practice, right?
But you know what? That's not a highlight on Instagram for them when they're dunking the ball or throwing the ball up from,
right.
Hey, I'm going to chuck it from the logo jump shots from 35 feet out. But, that's good if you could hit 40% of them, but you don't. You're hitting 30% if you're lucky, 27.
Right. They're not high percentage shots.
That's just another argument to rant me on between the free throw shooting and these kids chucking threes. I mean, so having a good 12-foot shot. Show me a consistent jumper, somebody.
I know. We sound like old men saying, "Get off my lawn."
Old man yells at cloud. That's me.
Old man yells at cloud.
I love that, Grandpa Simpson.
All right, we've got to wrap it up. Thanks, Sean Higgs, for joining us. We're back after the break talking NBA on Picks and Parlays. Stick with us. Welcome back to Picks and Parlays on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network and also streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to find us on any of those social media platforms, if you just search Picks and Parlays, we're really easy to find. Usually the first thing that pops up. I'm your host, Chelsa Messinger. You can find me on Twitter at Chelsa Messinger is my handle. It's my name. If you want to drop me a line or a good play, I'm always open to some good plays and some good parlays. Right now, we're jumping in to more basketball. This time, it's NBA. We've got Tony T joining us from the West Coast. Tony T, how you doing over there?
Hey, Chelsa, I'm doing well here. And, we're getting close to the All-Star break. We're going to see some teams getting up to 9 days off. And I think a lot of them are making their travel plans, Chelsea, because we're seeing a lot of lack of defensive intensity right now in the league. I know we talked about it on our last discussion on Friday's show about all the overs coming in, but I'm looking at these teams. They just don't seem to be really tight defensively, and I think it's because of their vacation that they're going to that's coming up for them.
Right. It's hard to not look ahead, I suppose, for some of these guys, and sometimes the effort's not there. Some of these guys are getting paid a lot of money. Regardless, I think the funniest thing I've seen in the past week is when the Lakers and the Rockets played and James Harden was doing the jump ball against JaVale McGee. The Rockets are one of those teams that have committed to small ball, and it's really funny to watch. But somehow they still beat the Lakers, so I don't know. Yeah,
they did that little fourth quarter run at the end. Lakers really came up empty, and then we saw we're going to talk about the Lakers a little bit in the segment here. But I think really what we're seeing here is just teams. I think they know they got to gear it up when they come out off the All-Star break, because we got a good 2 months of regular season basketball, and that's the time to get into playoff position, get those home courts. The top 4 seeds will get home court advantage in that first round. And there's a lot of teams there in the 4, 5, and 6 seed that are going to try and jockey for position.
Right. All right. So let's dive into some of these games. Let's start with the Brooklyn Nets and the Pacers. The Pacers are -7 in this one. The total is 220. The Nets, of course, Kyrie's still out, I believe. Last meeting, the Pacers won 115-86. Who do we like in this one?
Yeah, that's a big revenge spot here for Brooklyn. But I think based on current form, I would rather take the points here with Brooklyn at +7. And Nets have played well without Kyrie Irving in the lineup. Looks like he's going to be out at least another week until after the All-Star break. But there really aren't any other injuries on the roster for Brooklyn. So you got your Dinwiddie, LeVert and company will be there. They've covered 3 straight, 5 of their past 6 after that 1-point loss at Toronto on Saturday. They were really competitive in that Saturday game. Of course, look at the current form for the Nets. Really good right now. Past 5 games hitting on 49%, 40% from 3, and they're playing good defense. Indiana, they've lost and failed to cover 6 of their past 7 after that 7-point loss at home to New Orleans. For Indiana, it's been a mix of poor defense and poor rebounding. Looking at that 5-game span here, they're giving up over nearly 39% from the 3-point line here. I got to take the underdog in this spot, Brooklyn +7.
And the Nets are also 5-1 against the spread in their last 6. Let's move on to the Kings and the Bucks. The Bucks are laying a big number in this one. I see them at -14.5. The total is 227. The Kings are winners of 3 in a row, including some good teams. The Heat, the Timberwolves, Spurs, not as great, but 4-1 against the number in their last 5. The Bucks, one of the best teams in the NBA, if not the best. But do we like them laying that huge number is the question.
Yeah, that's a very good question, laying that many points here. I have to take the 14.5. I just can't lay Milwaukee. The Bucks, we know they're playing great, but again, this may be just a little bit too many points to lay at this point, because the Kings are showing a little bit of life here. And if you look at the Bucks here, 2 of the Bucks' past 3 games were decided by 12 points or fewer. Sacramento has won and covered 3 straight. 6 of their past 8, 3 straight wins and covers on the road. We look at their shooting form the past 5 games. Nearly 49%, and then they're exploding from the 3-point line. 45% shooting from 3. We saw that big game they had against San Antonio on Saturday, so they come in with a little bit of confidence. The back door is going to be open for them if the game gets out of hand. I can see the Kings make a run here, and of course, I got to take the Kings here, Chelsea, getting a boatload of points plus the 14.5.
Right. Although their last meeting, the Bucks won 127-106, but 14.5 is a lot of points. even though the Bucks 30-22 against the number. So definitely not as good as their 45-7 record, but they are good at home for the most part. 5-1 against the spread in their last 5. But those are just a bunch of numbers. And sometimes, how much do you base off stats, and how much do you base off of just gut feeling? Because I know sometimes it's hard to look at a bunch of numbers and really turn it into, your play.
Yeah, I really look at current form, shooting, and defensive form. Remember, when you go back to some of those previous meetings, you got to remember, you got to look at the injuries, what kind of form. Sometimes the teams change their rotation. Early in the season, it's just a grab bag because coaches really don't know what they have. They like to rotate players in and out. This time of the year, they know the 7 guys they can count on. And of course, you got to look at the depth as well as travel spots. Some teams aren't back-to-backs when they get pounded like this, or some teams coming off 2 days rest. A 2-day rest angle is always good for a defensive team. So a lot of these situations you have to look at individually.
Right. Sometimes the numbers can be deceiving, and some of these stats you really have to take with a grain of salt. Let's move on to the Spurs and the Nuggets. The Nuggets favored in this one, -7.5. Total is 221.5. The Spurs are 22-30, 22-29-1 against the spread. Nuggets 37-16, 26-24-3 against the spread. Who do we like in this matchup?
Chelsa, I'm going to keep riding these Spurs on the road to go over total. I'm going to play Denver, San Antonio over 221.5. When you look at San Antonio, now have gone over in 6 of 7 away from home. The issue with San Antonio on the road has been their defense lack of it, allowing 48%, nearly 39% from 3. They are shooting the ball well away from home at 47%, but Denver, they're on an overrun of 4 of 5 after their win at Phoenix, and their shooting form is really good here. Looking over their past 5 games, 49%, 39% from 3. They're also getting a little bit healthier now in their rotation, but look at the current form for the Spurs. We just gave you the road numbers, but currently it's been terrible defensively. 51% they're allowing overall, 43% from 3. They're on this rodeo road trip, so there's really not a lot of time to be in their facility practicing. So I'm going to continue this over trend with San Antonio on the road, go over 221.5.
All right, and the game we were alluding to, we've got the Suns and the Lakers. The Lakers are 39-12, but much worse when it comes to against the spread, 26-24-1. They're -11 in this one against a Suns team. That's not great. They're 1-5 against the number in their last 6, but actually they have a better record straight up and against the spread on the road. So a bit of an anomaly for the Suns. But who do we like in this one? Lakers, Suns, or the total?
Yeah, I'm going to be on the over again here. I like the Lakers and Suns going over 228.5. Now, the Lakers have hit a soft spot on their schedule. They face Golden State on Saturday. Now they face Phoenix. Now, Denver is that circle game on Wednesday. Then they have the 9 days off for the All-Star break. So I'm not saying they're mailed in, but if you look at their defensive numbers, they don't seem to be really intense there on that side. When you look at them over their past 5 games, I should say, they are shooting the ball well. 51%, 40% from the 3-point line. LA has gone over in 4 of 5. And of course, defensively is where they're lacking here. Look at that span of 5 games, 48% shooting, 40% from 3. They allowed Golden State to hang in that game. They didn't run away from them, even though Draymond Green didn't play. But again, the Lakers knew they were good enough with their offense just to win. I think this could be a similar situation where they're facing the Suns, and they don't expect the Suns to give them really much of a challenge. So you're not going to see that really intense defense from the Lakers. But the Suns have played over in 3 of their past 4 on the road. Remember, Aaron Baines is out. That's a key rim defender. When he's out, I don't like to play on the Suns. I think that they lack defense when he's out of that lineup, one of their rim defenders. And if you look over their past 5, they are allowing 47% shooting. But they do shoot the ball very well from the 3-point line and overall. And again, we referenced that Lakers-Golden State game. Golden State shot 52%. And that was a game LA had a really good control of. I can see this happening again where the Lakers have control. But again, you should see Phoenix here shooting the ball well enough to stay in this one and push it over. Take LA Phoenix over 228.5.
Right. Just based on the past 2 games alone, the Lakers are not a team that I would trust to cover 11 points, just because, as we mentioned, they let Golden State hang around, and they were favored by 14, I believe, in that one. And then, as we mentioned earlier, they lost to a Rockets team that doesn't have a player over 6'6", maybe 6'5", which I knew that was either going to go one way or the other because it's such a crazy mismatch But yeah, the fact that they're playing down to their competition, it worries me when they're getting 11 points, even though it is at home. But yeah, this Lakers team is. Do you think they get too much credit? Are they a team that sometimes you see some of these big market teams get more credit than they deserve when it comes to some of these numbers because people like betting on them? Are the Lakers one of those teams for you this year?
Well, yeah, the Lakers are a team, as we know, Anthony Davis and LeBron James you can count on, but it's the supporting cast that has not been consistent. You've seen some of their performance on the road where they've not looked sharp. It's a lot of times you'll see LeBron a good game, Anthony Davis a good game, and not much from the supporting cast. So it really, when we talk about the Lakers, when you're hoping they cover, you got to get something from the supporting cast. And I think that's really where it's lacking. And sometimes lacking focus. Remember, the supporting cast, you're not going to see these guys in the All-Star game, so they're getting 9 days off, okay? So I think a lot of them had their mindset on Cancun or wherever they're going to go for 9 days. You can count on the professionalism from Anthony Davis and LeBron James, but it's everyone else I'm a little worried about. It's tough to cover big spreads with two main guys on the court there. So that's where pretty much how I look at the Lakers. I think they'll get into focus as they come off the break because they know it's that 2-month crunch to get to the end of the regular season.
Right, and looking down the line, they've got they're a team it's really a big team. As I kind of reference against the Rockets, they should have had a big size advantage there, and before the Warriors got hurt, it looked like the Lakers were a team that could really give them a run for their money, or the Warriors would really run up and down the court on them and score a bunch of points. Looking towards the postseason, how do you see the Lakers faring?
Well, I think the Lakers and the Clippers are headed for a collision course. And we speaking of teams lacking, look what happened to Clippers on Saturday. Well, we talked about teams lacking that intensity as we get to the All-Star break. You got to be careful with these marquee teams. So I think the Lakers will be fine. They're a really good defensive team, but this is the time of the season where teams get a little lax, especially the contenders, knowing that not only you're going to play 2 months of basketball likely, when the regular season's over. So I think it's one of the situations where they're gearing down a little bit, get that break from the All-Star break, and then here we go. Let's get into playoff form as we conclude the season, the final 2 months of regular season. I think the Lakers and Clippers are headed to a Western Conference Finals.
Lakers and Clippers, and then who do you like to win it all?
Yeah,
we've got a few minutes to spare.
Yeah, I would look at the Clippers because of their depth. Again, we talked about the Lakers. You can count on LeBron and Anthony Davis, but what about the supporting cast? I'm not really sold on the supporting cast in big spots. I think when it comes down to crunch time, I think I have to favor the Clippers because the Lakers are lacking depth on their roster here, especially in big spots to support Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
Right. You don't have your faith in JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard.
These are really good, and even when we looked at some of the moves at the trading deadline, I mean, I thought a lot of these moves were there to help the regular season, take some minutes away from guys like Jimmy Butler or some of these guys that are forced to carry too much of the load. So that's a situation there where I don't think many of these players, and of course the Lakers are in a buyout market. We heard Collison, J.R. Smith. I mean, these guys will just help them in the regular season. I don't see these teams getting much help for the playoffs. But again, I think the Clippers' depth here will be too much here for the Lakers when they meet, if they meet in the Western Conference Finals.
Right, and especially, I'm sorry, my computer's about to die. Let me plug it in real quick. Oh.
All right, looks like we have to head to break here. So I guess when we come back, hopefully Chelsa will have her computer set up and we can go over all the picks that we gave on the show today.
And we are back on Picks and Parlays on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network and also streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm your host, Chelsa Messinger. You can find me every day on Twitter. My handle is just my name, @Chelsa Messinger. And also, if you want more good stuff, check us out on social media. Just search Picks and Parlays, or you can head to our website. picksandparlays.net for all of your gambling and sports betting needs. Right now, it's the portion of our show where we recap all of today's picks in case you weren't paying attention or you're just tuning in. We got you covered. Starting off, like Seton Hall at 18-1, as well as Louisville at 14-1, and a super, super long shot is the Creighton Blue Jays at 80-1. As we mentioned, college basketball wide open this season, so maybe you'll get some good value on some of those. Moving on to our daily college basketball games, Sean Higgs joined us for some picks. Florida State at Duke, taking the Seminoles at +8.5. Baylor at Texas, taking Baylor at -6.5, the number one team in the country to lay those points. TCU, Texas Tech, taking Texas Tech in that one as well. Tony T gave us some NBA picks. Nets at Pacers, taking the Nets at +7. Kings at Bucks, taking the Kings +14. That is a huge number for the Bucks to cover. Yeah, they're a great team, but it's a lot of points. Spurs and Nuggets, taking the over to hit 221.5. And finally, the Suns and the Lakers, taking the over to hit in that one as well. It's been a great show. We had plenty of picks, as we do each and every weekday. You can join us 4 p.m. Eastern live on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network if you want to join us there. And also, if you have any games that you're questioning, check out our YouTube page. And we'll see you tomorrow on Picks and Parlays. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.